lose weight, you burn up energy, you lose calories. Doctors say all kinds of exercises are great. You burn up energy, you lose calories. I mean, in fact, doctors say when a man makes love to a woman, he burns up energy, he loses 150 calories. I made love to a girl once, I lost even more. I lost 150 calories, my watch, and my wife. You gotta eat the right food, right? I love seafood. I don't like seafood restaurants. Oh, really? There's no originality. You look at the same sign, you know. The fish you eat today slept last night in some bay. I'll tell you about the fish. Only interest in how it's prepared. I don't care where the fish slept, if it slept, who it slept with, when it's
Good morning. It's Thursday, Delta Force Thursday, September the 7th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the Patriotic Song of the Day, we will have My Take, The Rape of the Mind, No Free Lunch, Rules for Retrogrades, Vivek Ramaswamy, Mayor Eric Adams, Nikki Haley, and Inside Delta Force. All that and more when I get back. Thank you. Now, there's no free lunch. 250 Economic Truths by David-Bahnsen.
What I'm not saying is that all government spending is bad, but there is no free lunch. There is no public tooth fairy. Father Christmas does not work on the Treasury staff this year. You can never bail someone out of trouble without putting someone else into trouble. Dr. Art Laffer. When he speaks in public, Dr. Laffer does a bit where he asks the audience to pretend the entire world is composed of just two farms and that one farmer is receiving unemployment benefits. He then states that the other farmer is paying the unemployment benefits, then asks the audience if this is going over their heads. It is always good for a laugh, and yet while we can laugh at the obviousness of his point with only two farms, we seem to miss this entirely when it comes to a populist society. Government spending is, by definition, confiscatory, and government spending is, by definition, redistributionist. And there are some legitimate expenses in government. But to fail to understand the cost of lunch, the trade-off, is to leave ourselves susceptible to the worst kind of applied economics.
And that was There's No Free Lunch by David-Bahnsen. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, the rape of the mind.
Paradoxical fear. Even when people are well prepared and trained to meet an anticipated disaster, such as imprisonment and brainwashing, the actual impact of the danger may provoke all kinds of defensive behavior. Overtraining may even weaken the person because the long anticipation allows all kinds of hidden fantasies to run rampant. In a minority of persons, this may be expressed in such pathological fear reactions as complete nervous breakdown or utter paralysis. Every person shows a different mental threshold of resistance to danger, and this threshold may change day by day, depending on our physical and mental fortitude. As a rule, inexperienced troops do not immediately show pathological fear in combat. Such behavior takes some time to develop. Paradoxically enough, fear reactions and moments of weakness often develop after the real danger has passed. When the tension of battle or the daily stress of life in a prison camp is over, and there's no longer any need to hide one's fears and to control one's behavior, many people let go completely and give free vent to all their anxiety. In Dover, England in 1944, the population suffered a kind of collective nervous breakdown when, after the tension of 4 years of continual shelling by the Germans, they heard only silence. The shelling suddenly stopped completely after the Allied troops swept victoriously across the Belgian coast. At that moment, many of the people of Dover broke down. It was as if the unexpected silence had brought them into a state of shock. This paradoxical fear reaction after danger has passed is important for us to understand. The totalitarian strategists know that during a period of temporary quiet and relaxation and tension, people lose their alertness and thus can be more easily caught in the totalitarian mental grip. In their strategy of terror, they consciously make use of the psychological action of the breathing spell. As soon as we let go and drop the defenses we have built up against danger, we can be brought to swallow any strong suggestion. The totalitarians also in their document on terror call the technique of taking advantage of such relief the strategy of fractionalized fear. In a quiet period between acute tensions, they can easily condition their victims' minds. Hitler used the Munich period of appeasement in precisely this way. During this time, his propaganda barrage was doubly effective. Whether the reaction to fear and danger is immediate or delayed, most people show, under stress, behavior that can be said to fall into one of the following patterns. 1. Regression, loss of learned behavior. 2. Camouflage in disguise, the so-called feign or faint reaction. 3. The explosive panic, defense through fight or flight. 4. Our psychosomatic conditioning, the body takes over.
And that was Paradoxical Fear from The Rape of the Mind by Joost-meerlo, MD. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, the rules for retrogrades. 40 tactics to defeat the radical left.
Rule 11. Never trust a man who is unwilling to have enemies. Acquiring adversaries and opposition is the unavoidable price of principle. Speaking the truth will earn a man enemies. It is a matter of when, not if. And the louder one speaks, the quicker the adversaries will gather. After all, a man cannot stand and genuflect at once. How can he stand up for truth if he's always bending the knee at the altar of taboo, observing popular pieties, palliating any and all imaginable parties offended? The man of appeasement has no religion. He is a loveless and a heartless creature. Do not befriend him. In his compulsive need to please all sides, the good and the wicked simultaneously, he is incapable of your friendship. The only true loyalty between human beings arises from a mutual, virtuous commitment to the truth. And the man unwilling to have enemies cannot, by definition, commit himself to the truth. Thus, an alternative expression of the same rule reads, a man without actual enemies can have no true friends. Jesus said that if the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first. While he stated this caution conditionally, he meant it as a guarantee. Christians can neither accommodate nor be accommodated by the world. Simply put, unless the worldly culture hates us, then we are failing at our job. Being God's spies does not mean that we hide our credo. In certain times we mute the source of it, but we never mute the credo itself. The credo is what earns the righteous their enemies. There exist only 3 types of friendship, 2 of which are mere shades of the single true form. True friends, friends of pleasure, and friends of utility. Friendships of utility are the most accidental form of friendship, according to the Aristotelian tradition, because the benefits they confer are material and wholly impersonal. In this case, you play with the kid down the block just because he has a swimming pool, even if you dislike him. Friendships of pleasure qualify as closer to true friendships because such friends are mutually attracted to something personal in one another, not a mere material benefit. However, the desideratum, which mutually attracts friends of pleasure, is not virtue. Only the true sort of friends are mutually attracted by one another's virtue, like iron sharpening iron, as St. Paul writes. Retrogrades take heart. Audacious, intrepid men live and breathe who are worthy of your friendship, provided simply that you make yourself worthy of theirs. True friendships, as opposed to friendships of utility and pleasure, prove to be rare, but not non-existent. How does one find such men but by flying the banner and the colors of the retrograde? Signal who you are and what you stand for, the truth. You act in the name of St. Michael. You will do your utmost until your dying breath to give aid to the righteous and to vanquish the wicked. Fellow retrogrades in your area will recognize and join you if you're doing your job well.
And that was Rule 11 from Rules for Retrogrades, 40 Tactics to Defeat the Radical Left by Timothy and David Gordon. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now a little bit from Ayn Rand's book, The Virtue of Selfishness. Quote, "The necessary consequence of our right to life is our right to self-defense. In a civilized society, force may be used only in retaliation and only against those who initiate its use. All the reasons which make the initiation of physical force an evil make the retaliatory use of physical force a moral imperative. If we, as a society, renounce the retaliatory use of force, we would be left helplessly at the mercy of the first thug who decided to be immoral. We would achieve the opposite of our intention. Instead of abolishing evil, we would encourage and reward it." Unquote. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Bishop Robert Barron.
Christianity is not primarily for Christians. It's for the world. You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world, Jesus says to followers. It's not, oh yeah, thank you, I now have these wonderful spiritual principles so I can become a happy person. Well, in fact, you will become a happy person. But the point of your being a follower of Jesus is to bring others to Christ. You live your Christianity for the sake of the world, not for your own sake. You're a beacon unto the nations. If Christians aren't in the world, those who are shaped by the cross of Jesus, what's going to happen is the world's going to start going down these weird paths. As the Christian gospel is preached less and less, as the Christian life is publicly lived less and less, and that's, let's face it, what disaffiliation means. Trouble for society will follow. So I want my fellow Christians listening to this to realize that you're not a Christian for yourself. You're a Christian for the world.
And that was Bishop Robert Barron. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, Stuart Barney's My Take.
What's with Harvard? Supposedly the most prestigious university in the country. It has hired the former mayors of failing big cities to teach the elites how to run a city. Incredible. Lori Lightfoot ran Chicago for 4 years. During that time, crime rose, 42%? Morale in city government cratered. Lightfoot fought with just about everybody, including the media. At one point, she said she wouldn't take questions from white reporters. And eventually, she stopped holding press conferences altogether. Reportedly, she will lecture on how to handle the media and how to run a city. Bill de Blasio was the mayor of New York City for 8 years. It was not a great time for the Big Apple. Riots, escalating crime, failing schools. By the end of his term, he was practically run out of town. His effort to run for the presidency collapsed within days, if not hours. So what does he do? He goes to Harvard to teach leadership and public service. Right, let me take the cynical view. Perhaps Harvard hired Lightfoot and de Blasio to teach how not to run a city, how not to handle the media. Why else would they hire failures? They could certainly enlighten their students about the failure of far-left woke policies or defund the police. That would be their real value. Teach the lessons of failure. I doubt Harvard sees it that way. Maybe the students will, though. After all, if Harvard is to educate our future leaders, they ought to have a pretty good idea of what went wrong in the past. You know how it is. The left will always claim to be on the side of truth and justice, even when they obviously are not. Second act of Barney just getting started.
And that was Stuart Barney's My Take. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, New York Mayor Eric Adams.
Support. And let me tell you something, New Yorkers. Never in my life have I had a problem that I did not see an ending to. I don't see an ending to this. I don't see an ending to this. This issue will destroy New York City. Destroy New York City. We're getting 10,000 migrants a month. One time we were just in Venezuela. Now we're in Ecuador. Now we're getting Russian-speaking coming through Mexico. Now we're getting Western Africa. Now we're getting people from all over the globe have made their minds up that they're going to come through the southern part of the border and come into New York City. And everyone is saying it's New York City's problem. Every community in this city is going to be impacted. We have a $12 billion deficit that we're going to have to cut. Every service in this city is going to be impacted. All of us. And so I say to you, as I turn it over to you, this is some of the most educated, some of the most knowledgeable, probably more of my commissioners and deputy commissioners and chiefs live in this community. So as you ask me a question about migrants, tell me what role you play. How many of you organized to stop what they're doing to us? How many of you were part of the movement to say, we're seeing what this mayor is trying to do, and they're destroying New York City? It's going to come to your neighborhoods. All of us are going to be impacted by this. I said it last year when we had 15,000. I'm telling you now, with 110,000, the city we knew we're about to lose. And we're all in this together. All of us. Staten Island said, send them out to Manhattan. Manhattan is saying, send them out to Queens. Queens is saying, send them out to Brooklyn. That's the game we play.
And that was Mayor Eric Adams about illegal immigrants and the impact of illegal immigration on the sanctuary city known as New York City. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now a little bit of Nikki Haley.
Well, I think Congress needs to do their job. You know, Biden has pushed us into socialism light. He's spending on every single thing, and they've forgotten the role of government. Government was intended to secure the rights and freedoms of the people. It was never meant to be all things to all people. So as we go into this, I have said that Biden has spent already $5 trillion in his term. But Republicans have spent too. We've watched them open up earmarks for the first time in 10 years. We've watched the 2024 appropriations bill has $7.4 billion in earmarks. Democrats have $2.8 billion in earmarks. So all of them are spending like drunken sailors. And it's our tax dollars that they're spending. What we're saying is, I had to balance a budget when I was governor of South Carolina. Americans have to balance their budget at home. Why is Congress the only group that refuses to balance a budget? They need to go in there and do the hard work. They need to make sure that they are giving money back to the taxpayers. They need to make sure that money is not being wasted.
And that was Nikki Haley. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, some Vivek Ramaswamy.
We just learned that the inflation rate is ticking back up. We're above 3% again for last month. We're going in the wrong direction now. And that's 3+%, 3.2 right now, above the 9+% we were rocking last year. So what people sometimes miss, because the White House isn't transparent about it, is that it's adding on to what we already have been paying. Your quick take on how you fix and really get the inflation to come down.
Simple answers: drill, frack, burn coal, embrace nuclear, unlock American energy production. Stop using taxpayer money to pay people more to stay at home than to go to work, which is worsening our supply chain situation. Stabilize the U.S. dollar as the sole mandate for the U.S. Fed, rather than a volatile dollar. And then most importantly, Harris, rescind a majority of unconstitutional federal regulations that act like a wet blanket on the U.S. economy. That's how we fight inflation. It is also how we deliver economic growth, GDP growth, something we've missed for a long time. I'm the pro-growth candidate in this race, and you know what? We're all more proud of a country when we are making more money in our country. As a businessman and an outsider in this race, I know how to deliver that, and I think that's one of the keys to our national revival.
Yeah.
And that was Vivek Ramaswamy. Back in a minute. Thank you. And a little bit more, Vivek Ramaswamy.
You're not just under Donald Trump, but under you, people are worried about authoritarianism. You have preemptively promised to pardon Trump no matter what juries and his peers decide, as well as today extending those pardons to January 6 rioters. You've dismissed white supremacists as boogeymen and unicorns. You want to fire at least half the federal government workforce, that's over 1 million people. You want to remove the right to vote from 18 to 25-year-olds, that's over 30 million people. You want to get rid of birthright citizenship. In fact, you refer to voting and citizenship as privileges when they are, in my view and in the Constitution's view, rights. It's a very anti-democratic worldview. What do you say to people who criticize you for that?
I don't think it's an anti-democratic worldview. I favor reviving the lifeblood of our constitutional republic. Revive actual free speech and open debate in this country. Revive civic duty in this country, something that our founding fathers envisioned. Revive true equality in front of the law, where people aren't prosecuted because of the color of their skin or because of the content of their political views. One standard of the rule of law for everybody. I stand for the founding vision of the country, where the people who we elect to run the government ought to be the ones who actually run the government, when in fact most policymaking functions in D.C. are performed by federal bureaucrats. So yes, my standard is, would Alexander Hamilton and John James and Thomas Jefferson and George Washington, would they be proud of what they see today, or would they be appalled? I think if they walked around and saw Washington, D.C. today, they would be appalled. By the time I leave office in January 2033 after 2 terms, they will once again be proud of what we've created, a government with 3 co-equal branches, not 4, shutting down that administrative state, reviving civic duty, and reviving one standard of the rule of law for all Americans. And that is not a Democratic vision or a Republican vision. That is a pro-American vision that I think can actually reunite this country, which is what I believe I will uniquely be able to deliver.
And that was Vivek Ramaswamy being interviewed on MSNBC. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Inside Delta Force by Command Sergeant Major Eric-Haney, retired.
18 of us left the final camp that morning. We arrived at the start point, the head of the Uwharrie Trail, at 0300 hours, and after a few simple instructions, we were released at 3-minute intervals. Major Odessa had given the short briefing. Use of roads and trails was authorized until instructed otherwise. We were allowed to follow the Uwharrie Trail until it terminated, and then were to take further instructions from the RV sitter at Trail's End. The trail would split at a point designated on the map, and we were to take the branch marked as the new trail. Cadre members would be posted where the trail crossed any roads. Have a good one. And off went the first man. I had been leaning against my rucksack for at least 30 minutes, drumming my heels on the ground and watching the other candidates depart. There were just a handful of us still sitting there in the dark, and I was anxious to get going. Hurry up and call my color and number. I should have relaxed and napped. I was the last man released from the start point. Daylight was still a couple of hours away, and the night was moonless, but I could feel the clear, hard-packed trail beneath my feet. It wasn't hard to follow, and I didn't need to use a flashlight. It would just ruin my night vision anyway. The chill air felt good rushing past my face, and since I was on the trail, I dropped my compass in a breast pocket of my jungle shirt instead of letting it dangle and bounce against my chest where it normally hung from its lanyard. Move hard while it's cool, before the sun comes up and starts sucking water from your body. Until then, moisture loss is mainly from breathing, and that's minimal. But later today, water's going to become critical. Push hard now. Push hard and make the most of this time. You were the last one to start, and that means you have to make up for the head start the rest of them have on you. Push hard. I did. I moved as swiftly as I could on that black trail through the woods, and it wasn't long before I could see the light of a flashlight bobbing along the trail in front of me. I caught and overtook the owner of the flashlight, and then started overtaking and passing other flashlights. Yeah, this is it. This is the way to make up for lost time. Within an hour and a half, I had caught and pulled ahead of at least half of the group, but after that I saw no one else. An hour later, the darkness started to subside. Sunrise was a while off yet, but it would soon be light enough to see well. A gray smear showed through the trees in front of me. That should be off to my right, because the trail is going north. I reached for my compass. Nah, probably just a temporary turn to the east before the trail swings north again. But the trail kept heading east, and soon started to bend back to the south. This isn't right, I thought, as the trail finally broke out into a clearing, and I had enough daylight to check my location. I dropped rock and got out my map and compass. Let's see, I should be about here on the map, about 20 kilometers up the trail. But the terrain looked nothing like it should. At this distance from the start point, I figured I should be on a long, narrow ridge running almost exactly due north. Instead, the trail was turning southeast and passing through a wide, shallow valley that opened out to the east. The terrain wasn't distinct enough to do a resection, so instead, I did a terrain analysis. Wide, shallow valley to the east, large, rounded hill mass to the southwest, prominent ridge to the north, running from southwest to northeast. Nope, doesn't fit. But just for the sake of argument, if I had taken the old Uwharrie Trail branch instead of the new Uwharrie branch, I would be exactly where I'm standing now. Holy rat's ass, good God Almighty, how could I have been so stupid? Of all the pecker-headed rookie mistakes, I had saved all my potential screw-ups to let them loose in this one big 4th of July atomic dumbass attack. Man, oh man. Now, let's see if I can unravel this Mungaso knot. I'm 12 kilometers from the branch in the trail, which means that I should have been 12 kilometers up the new trail. That would put me about here if I hadn't screwed up. That's a total of 24 kilometers if I backtrack. But just 20 kilometers if I cut cross-country to intercept the trail where I'd be right now if I hadn't followed up. But I might as well go ahead and intercept the trail where it crosses this hard-top road instead. That makes for a cross-country total of about 27 kilometers, or 16 miles before I see the trail again. Well, I ain't getting there by standing around this clearing with my face hanging out. I've just turned a 40-miler into a 55-miler. I saddled up and started moving. So far throughout the course, I had taken a short break every hour. Sometimes the break was for 10 minutes, sometimes for 5, and occasionally as short as 3 minutes. The length of the break was always predicated on how well I thought I was doing. Even a short break of a couple of minutes gives you a mental and physical lift, but always leaves you stronger than when you sat down. But my breaks had to be severely limited now. I pushed hard for 2 hours and then made a 2-minute stop. Fortunately, I didn't have to stop for water, but could get in my canteen and drink on the move. It was critical that I drink plenty of water, at least a quart an hour, because if I became dehydrated, I'd eventually go down. I stopped at a small spring bubbling from the base of the hill and filled my canteens. Then I dropped 2 iodine tablets in each canteen to purify the contents. My movement would thoroughly mix the tablets with the water, and it would be completely purified within 30 minutes. On and on I pushed, with a sense of urgency like never before. I adjusted my heading to hit the trail a few hundred meters before it intersected the road. I had trouble enough as it was without risking being caught by a cadre member on or too near a hardtop road. Shortly after noon, I struck the trail, and, a few minutes later, came out on the road. Major Odessa was waiting there, and seemed not the least bit surprised by my sudden appearance. "Seeing some of the countryside, are you?" he quipped. "I do wish you hadn't taken the wrong turn in the trail. It does so add to an already lengthy day." "Yes, sir, and I'm sure it hurts you more than it does me," I retorted as I crossed the road and re-entered the trail. "No, not at all," he replied. "I'm remarkably comfortable and pain-free. But you, on the other hand, you know you can quit at any time. Wouldn't you like to quit now? There's no one here but you and I. It's an excellent time to quit. You know it's almost impossible to catch up. Why not quit now and save yourself an exercise in futility?" He said the last sentence to my back as I walked past him and into the woods on the far side of the road. "No thanks, Major," I said with a glance over my shoulder. He was beaming at me like I had just won Best Dog of Show. Why did it have to be him? I'll bet he's been there for hours waiting for me, just for the pleasure of watching my humiliation. Well, it wasn't much as far as humiliations go. I had never been lost, just befuddled for a while. But now that was behind me, and I was back on track again. I pressed on with the strength born of desperation. A couple of hours later, I finally caught up with someone. It was Gorilla Man, and he was limping up the trail like he had a flat tire. "What happened to you?" I asked as I got close to him. He looked up. "Once it got daylight, I took off my boots and put on my running shoes to wear between RVs, but I think I've got March fractures now," he said between gritted teeth. "Why not put your boots back on?" I threw it over my shoulder as I passed him. "That's not a bad idea," he said wonderingly as he stopped and looked down at his feet. He sounded genuinely amazed at the advice. Thank goodness for guys like that. Whenever you're feeling really stupid, they can show you that you're just an amateur in the field. Within the next hour or so, I caught and overtook several other men. I had covered just slightly over 30 miles by now, but still had more than 20 to go. It was getting more and more difficult to do speed computations in my head. My hands were tingling from the rucksack straps cutting into my shoulders, pinching the nerves and arteries, and restricting the blood flow to my arms. I was bent forward against the weight of the rucksack. It felt like I was dragging a train behind me, and my feet hurt all the way up to my knees. I don't mean they were just sore. I mean they felt like I had been strapped to the rack, and someone had beaten the balls of my feet with a bat. I tried to calculate the foot-pounds of energy my feet had absorbed so far today, but had to give up the effort. I only knew that the accumulated tonnage of all those thousands of steps was immense, and it was only going to get worse. There was an RV at Trail's End. My rucksack was waved there, and I was sent up a gravel road through open farm country. After a while on the road, I started meeting guys coming back from the direction I was going. None of us had the spare energy to even nod to one another. We only exchanged pained glances of recognition. The sun was only about one fist above the horizon now. There was roughly an hour and a half of daylight left, and I still had a long way to go. I came to an RV at the end of a long, sweeping bend in the road. I had been able to see it for 10 minutes across the fields, and it was absolute torture to make my way there. Carlos was the sitter. I plotted my next RV and reported back to him. "Change the batteries in your flashlight and then show me that it works," he instructed. I did what he directed and then clipped the GI flashlight to the shoulder strap of my rucksack. "You may continue to use roads and trails, but you are not restricted to them. he said after I had shown him the location of my next RV. I nodded my understanding of what he had said, adjusted the straps of my rucksack, and was off again. I continued to study my map as I made my way back down the road again. The gravel of the road was especially painful to my feet. I walked in the ruts of the road where the gravel had been smashed to the sides, but the stray stones there were even more painful. It looked like my best route was to follow this road for another kilometer, then move due west, cross country and over a sharp ridge to pick up a road paralleling this one in the next valley over. That road eventually intersected the one where the RV was located. Darkness caught me before I reached the top of the ridge. The slope was covered in a tangle of mountain pine saplings and brush, but it was some relief to my legs to get off the road and climb. Once on top, I looked for the best way down. Far below, at the bottom of the slope, I could make out a light winking through the trees. That must be the security light on the church down there. My map showed a country church located along the road at the base of the ridge. As I made my way down the brush-tangled slope, that light was like a shore beacon to a sailor on a stormy sea. I zeroed in on it and ignored everything else. When I was almost to the churchyard, I heard a voice call out, "Oh, Jesus, somebody's finally there. Help me out of here. Help me. Come and get me." It could only be one person. I had been so focused on the light in the churchyard that I hadn't seen him. Parks was 50 meters to my left, tangled up in a 2-acre patch of kudzu. He was thrashing and flailing like a man caught in quicksand going down for the last time. "Over here, Parks. Take your time and walk straight to me. Stop fighting it and just walk slowly toward me. The more you fight it, the more tangled you're going to get." It was agony just standing there and waiting for him to wade out of that field of kudzu. "Okay, man. Okay," he mewed. "Just don't leave me. Wait until I get out." Don't get me wrong. I wasn't in agony over Parks's predicament. It just hurt worse to stand still than it did to keep walking. As soon as he was almost to the edge, I continued lurching downhill to the church. I was so exhausted now, and my body was such a throbbing mass of pain, that every little decision was a major undertaking. Parks caught up with me in the churchyard. I knew I had to go to the left on the road in front of the church, but it took a deliberate effort to tell my right from my left. "Which way do we go?" Parks whined. "I don't think that's the right way," he said to my back as I turned and walked away. But I could hear the gravel crunch under his feet as he fell in behind and followed me down the road. I slogged down the road into the growing darkness. I was done for. I no longer had any idea what time it was. I just knew it was sometime after dark. My legs were a solid, aching mass, as heavy as concrete. My arms were completely numb. I could only maintain a hold on my grease gun by tucking the gun's magazine well into the front waistband of my fatigue pants and pressing it there with my unfeeling and club-like hands. My neck ached terribly from fighting the weight of the rucksack. My head had been thrust forward all day like a tortoise's head shoved out in front of his shell. My eyes pulsed with the pain of utter exhaustion. I was ready to quit. That's it. The next RV is the last one. No matter what, I'm not going any farther. I can't go any farther. But damn, the next RV just has to be the last one, doesn't it? Sure, it has to be. How far have I come? I don't know, I can't remember. I can't think anymore. All I can do is put one foot in front of the other. Left, right, left. One step, and then another step. Just one more step. If I can just keep taking one more step, then I can keep going. Yep, I can keep going. I've come too goddamn far to quit now. Parks, shut up. Just shut the fuck up. Parks had been trailing along in my slipstream, keeping up a continuous babble. This is the wrong way. You're going the wrong way. We'll never get there this way. Is the next RV the finish? How much farther do you think it is? I can't make it anymore. I'm gonna quit. Don't leave me here. Don't leave me. I had to get away from him. His incoherent prattle was robbing me of what little energy I had left. From somewhere within the depths of my bowels, I summoned up a reserve of strength and increased my pace just as I hit the road junction. I turned to the right in the direction of the RV and left Parks standing at the intersection, mumbling to himself, whimpering that I was going the wrong way. I stumbled down the road into the darkness and walked right into the RV. I almost bounced off the sitter's truck and stood there swaying like a tree in the wind while Marvin gave me instructions. I could hear it clearly, but it seemed that it took a few seconds to understand what he said. It was like listening underwater. I plotted the next coordinates and reported back with my current location and the position of the next RV. From this point forward, the use of roads and trails is no longer authorized, said Marvin from the glow of his flashlight. Oh no. That means I'll have to cross that river, and I don't have the strength to swim it. I left the RV on wooden legs, laboriously working out a plan in my head. I'll have to find a steep bend in the river, build a poncho raft for my rucksack, and let the current push me to the other side. All I have to do is hang on. Then I'll change clothes and leave my wet uniform behind because I can't carry the additional weight of a waterlogged uniform. This is going to be tough, but I can do it. I know I can. Just as I had taken a few steps away from the RV, someone stepped out of the darkness and stopped me with a hand on my chest. It was Major Odessa. Haney, you look like you're in pretty bad shape. Why don't you give it up before you hurt yourself? Major, I'm not going to quit, but I can't argue with you about it. Just let me go. I staggered as I tried to walk around him. He kept his hand on my chest. Hold it a second. Does your flashlight work? Does it have fresh batteries? Show me. God damn it. God damn it. What's he screwing with me for? I don't have the energy for this. I fumbled with thick, useless fingers, trying to find the sliding on button of the flashlight, and after much effort, spilled a thin beam of light out across the road. Okay, that's good, he said as I leaned my way forward to step away. But you don't have to go any farther, Haney. You've finished. You have successfully completed stress phase and the 40-miler. For a second, I thought it was another trick, and I just stood there rocking back and forth as I tried to make out the meaning of what I had just heard. But as the words "successfully completed" finally came to rest in my consciousness, I saw the smile that had broken out on the Major's hitherto stone-like face. It was finally over. Someone stepped up and pulled the rucksack from my back, and other hands guided me off the road, down a pathway into the woods. I was led to the side of a fire and lowered to the ground with my back propped against the bank of the path. Smiling, the medic gently took my boots off, inspected my feet, and propped them up on my rucksack. Someone else brought me a canteen cup of something from a kettle sitting on the fire. Hot spiced wine. God, how delicious. I never tasted anything so perfect. Cadre members came over and shook my hand and said congratulations. Major Odessa came down and knelt beside me. You had me worried for a while this morning, Haney. I thought you had walked off the edge of the earth, he said with a smile. No, sir, but it was damn near off the map sheet, I said, and took another sip of wine. It was a little peculiar. Everyone was all smiles. Everyone was concerned. Everyone was helpful, where previously it had been so impersonal. It felt good. It felt good to be finished. It felt good to be sitting here drinking. It all just felt damn good. The cadre members drifted away, and I was left resting against the bank, comfortably slurping hot wine. My legs were as stiff as rails, same for the arms, but they would be all right tomorrow. And for now, it felt great just to be still and not have to move. I looked at my watch. 21:50 hours. I finished about 15 minutes ago, so let's round that off to 21:30. I started this morning at 03:30, so that means I had walked for 18 hours. I had covered more than 50 miles in 18 hours, and my feet sure knew it. But they had held up good and served me well. I couldn't have asked any more of them. I wriggled my toes and slapped my feet back and forth. Thanks, Pete. I heard voices up on the road. I could hear Parks arguing with Marvin, but I couldn't make out what was being said. A few minutes later, I heard Parks shouting and carrying on in an elated voice. The major must have told him he was finished. So Parks had made that last turn in the right direction after all. A few minutes later, he was carried down and propped against the bank of the trail across the fire from me. He looked like hell, but he was almost delirious with joy at having completed the march. He received the same post-march ministrations I had enjoyed, and soon we were left alone to savor our victory in shared solitude. And for once, his turbulent soul seemed in peace as we lounged there in silence, staring into the muttering fire and floating on our thoughts of this day. Within an hour, 3 more fugitives had increased the size of our happy campfire brotherhood. After they had been tended to and allowed to decompress a bit, we were guided and carried back up the road, helped into the back of a truck, and stuffed down in sleeping bags with a trip back to Aberdeen camp. I never heard the sound of the engine cranking, and knew nothing else until we were being helped out of the trucks back at camp. 2 of the men could not be awakened, and were carried into the barracks like sacks of grain and dropped on their bunks. I hobbled in on terribly stiff, sore legs and painful feet, fell on a cot, and went immediately back to sleep. The sun was up many hours before I was.
And that was the next to last part of In the Beginning from Inside Delta Force by Command Sergeant Major Eric-haney, retired. Back in a minute.